for me, please.
And for those of you who just came in, I'm using this monstrous huge setup for my broken ankle, but if you can be flat on the floor, that's fine. But what we want is knees together, toes apart, feet so wide apart that eventually our hips will come between our heels. So really make sure that your heels are under your hip flesh. You should be able to slide your hands between the heels and the thighs. And then if your sits bones don't sit all the way on the floor, build it up. You can either use a brick, which is what I think most people use under their sits bones, use it sideways, or you can use a tri-folded blanket if you don't need that much height, but be sure that you can really press your sits bones physically into something. Great. All right, so reach down, take your knee, pull the shin flesh up. We're extending the shins because the shins are the base of this pose. Do that on both feet and then reach back and pull your toes out backwards so that we're really just expanding the base, which is the shin, all the way from the knee through those long big toes. Then reach the big toes back behind you. We're getting as much contact with the shin, the ankle, and the top of the foot on the floor as possible. And then bring your awareness to your two sits bones, which should be pressing very firmly into whatever your support is. And again, be sure your support's tall enough so that your sits bones can really press. And from those 2 points, lift up through the side ribs, all the way through the collarbones, all the back of the neck, and it should feel as if a string is lifting you up from the very crown of your head, which is a little further back on the head than sometimes we think, and elongating your entire spine from those two sits bones. Then keeping that height, expand your palms, roll your shoulders back and trapezius muscles down and bring the palms together in front of you. Check back in with the sits bones, be sure they're still pressing equally and evenly. Use the thumb to lift the sternum one more time and descend the trapezius muscles in the back of the shoulder area. And then allow your eyes to gently close and turn your attention to your own breath. Observe your quality of breath this morning. Is it fast or slow? Smooth or rough? Shallow or deep? Don't try to change it, just notice how your breath is. And we use that observation of the breath to draw our awareness inward toward the realm of yoga. I'll chant 3 ohms. You can join or listen. Re-lift your sternum. Allow your head to release toward your heart. Set an intention for your practice this morning or this evening, whatever your time zone is. And keeping your sternum well lifted, raise your head and softly open your eyes. Release your hands. We'll do a little bit of shoulder work first. So I thought that since some of us still recovering from feasting, we're going to do half of the class standing poses and then the second half of the class restorative, since it's restorative week, but I need some activity first. So arms out, shoulder height, draw the trapezius muscles down now. Interlace the fingers, rotate, we're heading toward Baddha Buddhayasana, bound finger pose. Then check back in with those two sits bones and be sure that they're pressing into their support as you swing the arms up. If your shoulders are tight like mine, you can bend your elbows, put the back of the hands on the head, roll the shoulders back here, and then re-straighten. And for me, that always gives me a little more room to let the arms straighten and the shoulders move back. Then press through the palms, not the fingers. Keep moving the trapezius muscles down, even as you move the arms away. This is one of those famous dual actions in Iyengar yoga. So this part of my shoulder is moving down, but the arm is moving up. And then any amount, see if you can move the hands back behind the ears. Check in to be sure you're not arching your lower back, so keep pressing the sits bones and drawing the abdomen gently back toward the spine to keep the back from arching. One more extension, and release. See which finger's on top and change the cross of your fingers, other finger, first finger on top. Check back in with the sits bones again. Press those two sits bones, rotate the palms. From the two sits bones, with the trapezius muscles moving down, raise the palms. If the trick of bending the elbows helped last time, do it again. Move those shoulders back with bent arms. Should give you more mobility. And then re-straighten. Trapezius down, but arms up and away. Keep the back from arching by pressing into the sits bones and gently drawing the bottom abdominal muscles toward the spine. And see if you can move the arms any amount behind the ears. Keep breathing, keep pressing the sits bones. Look at your elbows. Are they as straight as you can make them? Challenge yourself. Even the left one for some people. One more stretch and release. Good. Now remove your support and toes together, knees apart. This is still called Virasana for some reason, but it's the different form of it. And we're going to be doing forward and then side to side. So if you need bricks for that, you can take 2 bricks and just walk yourself a little forward. We're not coming all the way forward yet. So walk a little forward, stop. Then press your sits bones back into your heels. If they don't reach, take a blanket, I have an extra blanket here, and put it between the sits bones and the heels so that something will keep pressing on the heels. You really want those sits bones to be grounded. You don't want the butt to be floating in the air. So press the sits bones into the support and move the bricks a little more forward. Stop and press the sits bones, lift the sternum. Be sure that you're not letting your back round this way. We want the back to be straight or even a little concave as we come forward. Then a little more forward, press the sits bones down, reach the sternum out to make sure that the back is not rounding. A little more forward, sits bones back, sternum up. A little more forward, sits bones back, sternum up. And when you've come to your maximum, take one moment with a straight spine, breathe. And then allow the back to finally round and bring your forehead to a brick or your hands. Actually, don't do your hands because I want your hands straight. To a brick or a blanket or something in front of you. So sits bones are still touching something and your forehead descends to some support. We're going to take 2 breaths here. And then raise your head. And walk yourself either on fingertips or bricks to your right. And I have to take my hand and move my abdominal flesh over my thigh so that I can get my torso parallel to the ground. And then when you come all the way over to the right, notice your left sits bone has probably raised up off of its support. So press that sits bones back down into its support, whether it's your heel or your blanket. And make yourself as parallel to the floor as possible as you once again extend your head and allow it to come down to support. So you should be feeling a stretch on the left side of your rib cage. You can bend your right elbow a little bit. One more breath. And then up to fingertips and back to the center. Reground the sits bones and come down. Take 2 breaths in the center again. And up to fingertips and then over to your left. Again, I have to move my abdominal flesh over the thigh and then really reground that right sits bone. It came up high when I moved and I'm pulling it back down to its support as I lower my head. Stretch the right ribs. And then up to fingertips, back to center, anchor the sits bones, Allow the forehead to descend one more time for our last 2 breaths in an even position. And then walk yourself back up to seated. Remove your support, and we will come up into our first downward dog of the class. Now we're going to come into it a little more slowly than usual. Our focus today is going to be keeping the trapezius muscles, these big broad muscles that are part of the shoulder, all the way down and on the back. They tend to roll up, especially in down dog for a lot of us. So we really want all of this musculature to be moving down toward the sits bone. So toward that end, watch first just for a second. I'm going to show how we're going to do this. And we'll go through it slowly when we come up. But when you first come up, I want you to keep your knees bent so that you can really press the arms back. See how bent my knees are? And I'm focusing on drawing this back toward my sits bones and down toward the floor. So instead of this, I'm getting this. I really want the upper thoracic to become concave. Then we'll straighten our knees, heels up, keep that concavity, keep the chest moving toward the legs, and then we'll reach the heels down. So let's all start from hands and knees. First fingers parallel to the edges of the mat. Roll the upper arms out so the eyes of the elbows look forward and draw those trapezius muscles down toward the sits bones here. Then tuck the toes, lift the buttocks, but keep the knees bent as you work to pull the trapezius away from the ears and all of those back muscles up toward the ceiling. Then when you've gotten the thoracic spine as concave as you can, then straighten the knees, heels up, and keep pulling your sternum toward your thighs. Let the head just hang, work the arms, roll the upper arms in, lift the sits bones to the ceiling. When you've extended the spine to your maximum, then start reaching the heels down, and of course my broken ankle doesn't go to the floor, but I will keep pulling it back so that one happy day it will again. So I'm coming up, but you all stay. I want to look for a second. Press the first finger and thumb base joint. Pull those back muscles all the way from the shoulder blade up to the sits bones. Nice. Good, 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 good. Yes. Pull the thighs back as if I was there with a rope, pulling your thighs back. Get the weight back, 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 back. Yes, I saw some movement there. That was exactly what I wanted. Beautiful. One more breath. Maximize the best parts of this pose. And then walk your feet forward. And when your feet are under your hips, stop. Engage the legs. That means press the big toe base joint and the outer heel. Lift the knees up to the ceiling. Engage the quadriceps and pull the thighs back. And for a moment, just let the torso hang. The legs are firm and working. The torso and head are hanging. Then hands to your hips. Roll the shoulders back and stand up. Good. All right, standing poses. Let's all take at least bricks for our first Uttanasana, and I will do it sideways. If you are feeling a little stiffer after all of the holiday festivities, you might even want a chair for your Uttanasana, so I'll leave that up to you, but take some kind of support. And let's start, you don't need to see the top of my head. Let's start with our feet hip width apart. Oh, y'all don't want to see my rigid ankle. I'll turn around. There we go. So with hips, feet hip width apart, let's go ahead and take this as Namaste when the feet are hip width apart instead of together. So press the big toe base joint down. In fact, everybody lift your 10 toes up off the ground. Feel how that engages the quadriceps and also spreads the weight evenly across the feet. So keep that weight spread by pressing into the big toe base joint and the outer heel. And if you do those 2 points, it spreads the weight across the feet. And then with those 2 points still pressing, gently let the toes come back down. Good. Lift the knees, pull the quadriceps back to the wall behind you. Move the buttocks down toward the floor. Feel how that straightens the lower back. And it should make it feel nice and released. Good. And then just for a second, to get as long as possible, swing your arms up into Urdhva Hastasana above your head. And keep pressing those 2 foot points, big toe base joint, outer heel, as you stretch your arms even more up. Then if you have lower back issues, go ahead and bring your arms down. Otherwise, you can go from Urdhva Hastasana straight forward into the concave Uttanasana. So I just bring my arms down to my support, whether it's the chair or the bricks. And I press the big toe base joint and heel again. I pull the thighs back and I extend the sternum forward to the wall in front of me. So my thighs are moving to the wall behind me. My sternum moves to the wall in front of me. I get my spine in this position as long as it can be. One more breath in this concave position. Then lower your support. If you're on the chair, see if you can come down the chair legs a little bit. If you're on bricks, see if you can lower them and keep the concavity. If your back rounds, then go back up to the last height you were at. We want a really flat back. So keep pulling the thighs back, keep pulling the sternum forward, and then see if you can challenge yourself one layer lower. Again, Satya honesty is part of the yogic practice. So if your back rounds, go back to the previous phase. We will eventually round the back, but for now, everybody keep your back flat. And if that means coming up higher, that's fine. You want a good pose. You don't want to see how far you can go. So take your maximum concave pose, however low your body wants to go today with the concave back. And then with an exhalation, bend your elbows, keep the legs working, but allow the head and torso to drape down. So now I let my back round. I'm still working the legs intensely. I'm pressing those big toe base joints and outer heels. I'm lifting my knees. I'm pulling my thighs back. And the more I work the legs, the more my torso can drape. So notice that correspondence. Work the legs more, drape the torso more. Work the legs more, drape the torso. You can now take your hands to the back of your ankles and see if you can gently extend the torso any further down toward the floor. Keep the legs active. One more breath here, and then keep the base joint and outer heel pressing. Come back to your concave position, however high that was for you. Take 2 breaths here, maximizing your leg work. Really firm legs. Work those muscles. And then hands to the hips. Roll the shoulders back and come up to standing. Uttanasana, forward folding pose. Our second standing pose will be beloved Trikonasana. So if you like to use bricks, set up your bricks. And we will start from Uttanasana, and let's go ahead and take from Tadasana, and let's take classical Tadasana with the feet together this time. Be nice if y'all could see my feet. I would really need a wide angle camera. So Tadasana, same things, big toe base joints, outer heels press, lift the knees, press the thighs to the wall behind you, buttocks down toward the floor, sternum up. Then step or jump your feet wide. There will be no jumping for me for a while. And you'll notice my injured ankle has to come up off the ground, but both of your feet should be flat like this one is. So the toes should be pointing straight ahead and the foot should be flat on the ground unless you have an injured ankle. Press into both outer heels to lift up your side ribs. Good. And then I'm going to do the opposite of you. Turn your left foot to the left and your right toes all the way in. Re-square the pelvis and torso front because chances are they moved when you turn the feet. Good. And then with your torso and pelvis straight ahead, extend through that right arm and get as long as you can. Keep pressing into the back heel. And when you've extended the torso as long as you can, keep rolling the chest up. Don't let it roll toward the ground. Then bring your hand to the brick and park your other hand on your hip. From this position, re-engage the legs. Press the back heel and the front big toe base joint. And the word that the Iyengar senior teachers have been using lately is eject. Eject your torso away from your hips. So from this solid base, let the torso just shoot out to get longer. And then with your hand on your hip, use that elbow rolling back to roll the torso up toward the ceiling any amount. Good. Move the trapezius muscles away from the head and extend the top arm. Pull the two arms away from each other. Rotate the torso any more up toward the ceiling. Check back in with the legs. Are they really working their maximum? From your right hip, pull the entire body back toward the back heel. Feel how that helps elongate the torso. One more breath, working the arms and legs. And then lift up to come up. Toes forward. And take a break with your hands on your hips for a second. Is everybody okay? And hi, Kristen. Everything going okay? Did you come out or did I just not see? Okay, sorry. All righty, second side. I have to confess, I do not have Anne's big, beautiful pictures. So I see these little bitty matchbox pictures of people and I can't always entirely tell what you're doing. So apologies. Second side, our legs are still wide. Re-engage those two outer heel points to lift up through the torso. This time turn your right toes in a little and your left leg all the way out. And again, my foot has to stay up a little because it was recently broken, but yours does not. So press the back heel and the front big toe base joint as you extend to the left. Get as long as you can. Keep rotating the torso. Don't let it turn toward the floor. We're turning straight to the side and as much up as you can, but really for most of us, it's just to the side. And then when you've got your maximum extension, hand down to the brick, other hand to your hip, and use that arm to rotate the torso again. Press into the back heel and the front big toe base joint and eject the torso away from the hips. And then use that left hip crease to pull the buttock muscle back toward its back heel and eject those bottom ribs even more. Good. Then keeping the torso rotating to the ceiling, finally raise the right arm. Pull the two arms away from each other. See if that allows you to rotate the torso to the ceiling anymore. Pressing the back heel and the front big toe base joint. One day mine will reach the floor again. One more breath here. And all the way up. Toes forward. And step back together. Beautiful. All right, next up is Virabhadrasana 2. Almost the same darn pose, isn't it? I'm going to use this for my ankle. So step or jump your feet wide again. Once again, left toes in a little, right leg all the way to the right, and then re-square pelvis and torso. Vira 2 is Warrior 2. And it's almost like Trikonasana, except this is with a bent front knee. So we haven't bent the knee yet, and we're gonna do 3 bends. So watch just a second. Don't do it first, just watch. As you bend your knee, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, and then we're gonna stay slower than that. But when you come down, be sure the knee bends over the middle toe. Some people have a tendency for the knee to come out in front of the big toe, and that's not good on the knee joint. So watch where your knee tracks as you come down, okay? So from this position, right, re-square the pelvis and torso to the front, really anchor the back heel, and then we're gonna bend your right knee, make sure it tracks over the middle toe once, come all the way down to parallel if that's possible for you, and then come back up. Time 2. Bend the knee, make sure it tracks over the middle toe, keep the torso straight up, and come back up. And then on this 3rd time, we're gonna stay. So bend the knee, make sure it tracks over the middle toe, come all the way to horizontal 5 if possible. Allow the head to turn over those right fingers, but don't let the torso turn. Torso is still facing immediately forward. And sink a little deeper into your pose. Keep pressing that back heel. One more breath. This is a strong pose. And then straighten the knee to come out, toes forward, hands on your hips. Everybody okay? One of the reasons we do the bend straight is to lubricate the knee joint, especially in the morning for most of us. So it's usually a good idea. All right, second side. Re-engage the two outer heels, arms out. This time, right toes in a little bit, left leg all the way to the left, and re-square the torso and pelvis to the front. Then we're gonna do the same 3 bends. So keeping the weight anchored in the back leg, bend your left knee. Make sure the knee tracks over the middle toes. Come all the way to a horizontal 5 if possible, and then straighten. Time number 2. Bend the knee, make sure it tracks over the middle toes. Come to a horizontal 5 if possible, and straighten. And then the last time we're gonna stay. Re-square the pelvis and torso front. Bend that left knee. Keep weight in the back leg. Look over your left fingertips. And then everybody descend 1 more inch if that's possible for you. Keep pressing the back heel. 1 more breath. Don't lean over the front leg. Keep your weight centered. And then straighten the front knee. Toes forward. And I'm gonna heel toe in because of my ankle, but step back together. All right, that'll wake up the thighs first thing in the morning, won't it? Woohoo! Parsva Konasana, side angle pose is next. So, from our best Tadasana, wide legs. Press into those outer heels. Now, sometimes halfway through the standing poses, we start getting kind of sloppy. Oh, I know this, I can do this. Every pose deserves attention, right? So press the outer heels, lift the torso, trapezius down, then left toes in a little, right leg all the way to the right, re-square the pelvis and torso. Good. Now we've already had practice bending our knees, so with an exhalation, we're just gonna bend the knee to the side. Good. And for a moment, just rest your right hand on your right knee and park your left hand on your hip. Then take a look down, be sure the knee's still tracking over the middle toe. Be sure that you are really rotating the torso away from the leg. It should still be facing front, good, lovely. Now, if this is your pose, you can stay here, or if you wanna take your hand, your right hand down to a brick behind your ankle, or the floor, I can't do the floor, I've got short arms, then that's fine. If you take the arm down, press the bent knee against the arm and use that leverage to rotate the torso even more up toward the ceiling. Good. Keep pressing the back heel and then raise the top arm. It's just first straight up to the ceiling, open the chest here, then turn the palm towards your head side, descend your back hip in the amount to be in a straight line, because a lot of those hips were looking a little up. And then with an exhalation, take the arm over your ear. Now your left arm is in a straight line with your left leg and you're extending through the ring finger. Press from the heel through the ring finger. Look up under your arm at the ceiling, 1 more breath. And then raise the arm. Bring up the torso. Straighten the knee. Toes forward. Hands on the hips to take a rest. That is also a strong pose. And because of my ankle, my feet got askew, so I'm unaskewing them. Everybody okay? Thumbs. Good, thank you. All right, we have a second side. So make sure that your feet are pointing straight forward, toes straight forward, outer edges of the feet parallel to the outer edges of the mat. And then arms out. This time, right toes in a little, left leg all the way to the left. Re-square the pelvis and torso straight ahead. Press into that back heel. Keep the weight in the back heel. When we move forward, our whole brain wants the weight to move to the front foot, but yoga is not like that. So keep the weight back as we exhale and bend the knee. Come to that parallel 5 position. Good. And then first, just bend your left arm and rest it on the thigh. Bend your right arm, put it on the hip. From here, Use those two arms to rotate the torso to the ceiling. Any amount. See how much rotation you can get here. Good. And then if you want to take your left hand to a brick or the floor, and my height's different here because of my prop, then do so now. Then press that bent knee against the arm. Use that leverage to rotate the torso more. Good. And keeping weight in the back heel, swing the arm straight up first. Open the chest. Turn the palm to the head side. And then allow the arm to come in a straight line with the back leg. One line of energy. Press from that back heel through the ring finger. Look up under the arm. Extend your arm in this pose. Side angle pose. And then arm back down, torso back up, straighten the knee, toes forward. And go ahead and step back to Namaste T, feet hip width apart. Then we'll take a resting Uttanasana, so engage the legs, but allow the torso then to fold forward, and whichever is more comfortable for you. If you're more comfortable holding your elbows, if you get more spinal release with that, then hold your elbows. If you get more spinal release with your fingertips on the floor or bricks, do that. So whichever arm position is best for your spine. We'll just take a few breaths here. Work the legs, lift the kneecaps, press the thighs back, but let the torso and head hang. Resting Uttanasana. And hands to your hips. Roll your shoulders back. Come up. All right, one more standing pose, and then we're going to move to the restorative section of class. So the last standing pose is going to be Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. And because you would be amazed at how much you need flexibility in your ankle to balance. If you can't make those micro adjustments left and right, you can't balance. So I'm going to use the wall. Feel free to use the wall if you want to also, because if you're worried about balance, you're not going to be doing the pose. So find the space where you want to do your Ardha Chandrasana, and we'll come into it just the way that we did Trikonasana. We always come in through Trikonasana. So if you want a brick, have a brick with you. If you want to challenge yourself and balance in the room, that's also fine. Good. So go ahead and step wide. Turn your toes to the right. Go ahead and take your best Trikonasana. Really take the pose. Don't just slide through it. Take a moment and embody the triangle pose. Then top hand to the hip. Bend the bottom knee. Put your hand on your brick or the floor. Step over that front bent knee and then launch your back leg up into the air. Extend up through the inner thigh. So you should be really engaging the inner thigh to lift. Rotate the torso to the ceiling any amount. And when you finally have your balance and feel as if your hips are square, raise the top arm. If it's okay with your neck, you can look up at the thumb, otherwise look straight ahead. Or even if you have neck issues, look down, but if you look down, be sure that the chest stays open. Don't let the chest follow the gaze. So keep lifting from the inner thigh. I'm gonna come look, y'all stay where you are. Roll that top shoulder back any amount. Lift from the inner thigh and extend through the big toe base joint. Don't let the feet go to sleep. Don't let the lifted foot go to sleep. Y'all are doing a great job of balancing, much better than I would have. Trust me on this. One more breath, and when we come out in a second, we're gonna come back through Trikonasana. So extend your Ardha Chandrasana, best pose, best second of the best pose, and then bend your front knee, reach back with the back foot, and just come up into triangle pose on your way out. And then stand up, toes forward, second side. So move your support if you are using a brick. Find your space. Be of good cheer. The standing pose portion is almost over. And then step your feet wide. Go ahead and take your Trikonasana. Again, best Trikonasana you can do. It's not just a way station as we head toward Ardha Chandrasana. It's its own pose and deserves the best effort we have. Good. And then hand to the hip. Bend that front knee and bring the weight over the front leg. Put your hand on your support or the floor. And then launch the back foot up into the air. Rotate the torso to the ceiling. Lift from the inner thigh and extend through the big toe base joint. Do not let that right foot go to sleep. It is working. It is active. Suck back from your left hip all the way back toward the lifted foot. Feel how that helps. Again, eject the torso from the hips and roll the torso again. And then when you have your balance, see if you can raise the arm. And if it's okay with your neck, look up at your thumb. Extend all the limbs. Eject the spine from the hips. Embody your best Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. When we come out, we're going to come out through Trikonasana. So bend the standing leg, reach back with your back foot, and then straighten the front leg to your Trikonasana. And up, toes forward, and step together. Yay. All right, so our first restorative pose is going to be a supported Uttanasana. So whatever kind of support you need for your head in Uttanasana. And let's go ahead and have this be hip width apart Namaste. And what I usually use is 2 bricks so that the top of my head can be on this, but you can use chairs and bricks. Just build up whatever support you need so that your head can rest on something when you come down to your Uttanasana. So I'll give you a second to build up your support. And then we're going to stay here. The whole point of the support is to allow us to stay for a couple of minutes. So make sure that you're not challenging yourself so much that 2 minutes will be hard. And we'll be working the legs, as we always do in Uttanasana, so that the thighs will be engaged, but the entire torso and head will be able to just drape down. So when you're ready, from your Namaste, see what people's setups are. Good. Yeah, you have to find the right distance from your head so that when you come down, your head is really resting. And then when you get your setup, go ahead and allow your head to come down. Really engage the thighs, lift the knees, press the thighs away. But the torso and head, this might even be too tall today, the torso and head rest. And I see that most of you are in the pose good. All right, so I will take a look at this. As you stay in the pose, and I'm going to be quiet in just a second, but keep checking back in. Cycle through, pressing the outer heels and big toe base joint. Make sure that your feet are pointing straight forward. Cycle through, lifting the knees and pressing the thighs back. And then check to be sure that you are not engaging tension in your back muscles or your head. The head should just be perfectly soft on its support. And then go back to your feet. Press the big toe base joint, outer heel, lift the knees. So I will hush so you can do that at your own pace. And I will let you know when it's almost time to come out. But cycle through those because our body forgets. Go back through your cycle one more time. Be sure that you're pressing the big toe base joint. Be sure that you're pressing the outer heels. Be sure that your knees are lifting, thighs are pressing back, and head and torso are really draping. And then bring your hands to your hips. Roll your shoulders back and softly roll up. Keep the legs engaged. Our next supported pose is Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. And for this, I'm going to give you a choice. I know the Iyengar's frown on that, but you know whether you have more trouble with your shoulders or your legs in this pose. So either your hands will be at the wall, and I'll show both, and you will have enough support to rest your head. So I have tight shoulders, so it's always better for me to support my hands. So I'm going to put my hands at the wall, and they're the sideways so that my finger and thumb are pressing into the board. So this is going to be my hand support, and then you put your head support under your sternum, so that when you press back, that head support should be right where you need it. And then I've got something for my hands and something for my head, and it's easier to stay here and pull the legs back. If, on the other hand, you feel like you need more leg support, then you can just turn around, find the distance to have your heels at the wall, then do the same thing this way. When you press up, do this, okay? So everybody find your head support, decide whether you want your hands or your feet at the wall, and find your distances. And we'll all go up together. So just do the preparatory distance finding first. Make sure that when you push back, your head's going to really be on its top, supported on the support. Anybody have any questions while we're hanging out and waiting? All right. So I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes. If this gets too long for you, feel free to come down and rest in child's pose. But now everybody go ahead and push up into your supported Adho Mukha Svanasana. Keep pressing through those heels, even if they're not on the ground, but use the support for either. I think everybody has chosen hand support. I can't see one person, but everybody else has chosen hand support because we all have tight shoulders, don't we? It's all those computers. And just allow your head to rest on its support. And honestly, for me, that's a struggle. I have to keep reminding my head that the neck doesn't need to tense up. So if that's true for you, do that as part of your cycle, right? Lift the thighs, press the heels back, rest the head. Internally rotate the upper arms. I will hush and let you cycle through your own instructions. That was the first minute. Again, if anybody needs to come down and rest and then go back up, that's perfectly acceptable in this second minute. Just 10 more seconds. Re-engage your arms and legs and relax your neck and head. And then to come out, walk hands back towards your feet if your hands are at the wall. Good. And then take a moment in your resting Uttanasana and re-engage the knees. Let the head and torso just drape. And then hands to the hips. Roll your shoulders back and come up to standing. Good. All right, the next asana is Upavista Konasana. So it is a seated pose on the floor. If you need support to keep your spine straight in our wide-legged pose. This is Ubhuvi Konasana. Then sit on folded blankets, and the best way to fold them is so that you're sitting on the corner. I'll show. I actually don't want the blankets, but so take as many blankets as you need for your spine to be straight and sit so that the corner is facing forward and your legs are hanging off the edges. That way your thighs can descend, which is important for this pose, but you do have the sits bones on the blanket, but no part of the thigh should really be on the blanket. So this is a really good way to work in Upavista Konasana with blanket support. But if you don't need the support, then just sit in your wide-legged pose and have a strap nearby. Beautiful. So the first thing I always do when I sit down in Upavista Konasana is I lift my buttocks up and free the buttock flesh and then sit back down. Because sometimes as we move the legs out, the buttock flesh gets kind of pushed and pulled by the legs moving. And so you want those sits bones, once again, to be pressing straight into the floor with no flesh impeding that. So make sure that you have good contact between your sits bones and the floor. And then check your feet. Be sure that your toes are pointing straight up and that you can extend through both legs. Then press the thighs down, extend through the big toe base joint, take your fingertips behind you and just get tall in the spine. Good. And then, if it's accessible for you to move forward any amount, either grab your toes or use a strap around your big toes. I can do it with both toes. If you can't, you might need two straps, but this works for most people. Use something to be able to come forward with a flat back and hold your toes. So straps or toes, but back straight. Be honest with yourself, Satya. One of the yamas, be honest. Lift the sternum, keep pressing the thighs down. Don't let the legs go to sleep. The thighs press down and the legs extend away. And then once you've been here for a few breaths and your body's gotten used to it, if you push the big toe base joints away even more, doesn't that make the pose more intense? So explore your comfortable maximum here. Again, this is restorative. We're not trying to do anything crazy, but I can really get a better leg stretch and spinal stretch when I extend my big toe base joints. So work with that, see where your edge is. Keep the toes pointed straight up, don't let them roll down. And lift the sternum, make space in the spine. Press the buttocks down, roll that back corner of the hip down. Don't let that roll forward. That's the difference between this pose in gymnastics and this pose in Iyengar yoga. We don't let the hips roll up. We ground those two back hip points firmly into the floor and just bring the torso forward. Breathe. One more breath. And then back up to straight. We had a request for some twists. So this is where we're going to do those twists. Reground the sits bones. Reground the thighs. Extend through both big toe base joints. And then Urdhva Hastasana for just a moment. Oh no, my hips rolled forward. I even felt it. So reground those two back hip creases as you stand in your Urdhva Hastasana. Good. Then cactus arms and turn to your right. And left fingertip in between your legs, right fingertip behind your hips, and re-straighten the spine. And then use those fingertips to turn the torso toward the foot any amount. Keep the spine straight, keep the sternum up. Rotate, rotate. Then check in, be sure as you move away from your left leg, the left sits bone is not getting light. Press that sits bone down as you turn away from it. Then grab your strap, lasso up your right foot. Use each side of the strap to lift the spine up first. Take a couple breaths here. I do love the strap on the feet. It just gives you so much spinal extension. And then I noticed that my torso has stopped rotating as much toward the foot as it was when I used my hands. So I can pull a little bit more with my left hand and use that to turn my torso toward that foot. So see if that works for you. Just pull a little more with your left hand than with your right and see if that helps turn your torso. Then reground that left hip again and extend through both feet. Sternum up. We're working on long spines. Now everybody, without moving anything else, just turn your head back and look back at those left toes. Are they still pointing straight up? If not, be aware, straighten them and remember that you have to keep part of your mind in those toes as you turn your head back now towards your right foot. Lift up. And you can release the strap and turn your torso back towards center. Good. Reground the sits bones, reground the thighs, extend through both big toe base joints and one more Urdhva Hastasana. And yet again, even though I just reminded myself, my back hips came up a little, so I'm regrounding those 2 hip points. And then cactus arms, this time turn to your left. Right hand in between your 2 legs. Left hand behind you and use those 2 hands to rotate toward the foot. Keep the back hip grounded, the sits bone grounded, and keep the back toes pointing straight up. Keep the sternum lifted and rotate. Then grab your trusty belt. Lasso the foot, and see this time if pulling a little more on the right hand helps you move the torso toward the foot. So use both sides of the strap to lift the spine up. Use your right hand to pull a little more intensely to rotate the torso. Keep grounding the right sits bone. Keep lifting the sternum. And now without moving anything else, turn your head and see if those back toes are still pointing straight up. If not, correct, and make a mental note. Then turn back toward the front foot and lift the sternum one more time. And release, face center. If you need height for Baddha Konasana, get that height now, and I certainly do. Now let's go ahead and do the corner fold here. So I'm going to start in Upavista Konasana and fold the feet in. Be sure also that you have a brick nearby because we're going to do the magic Baddha Konasana opening with the brick. And it is magic. So from your Upavista Konasana, take your right hand and haul your leg in. We do this instead of moving the leg in under its own muscle power. We do this to keep the groin soft. So really pick up the leg, move the foot in, bring it to center line, and then do the same thing with the other leg. Lift that heavy thigh up with your hand and bring the feet together. And my broken ankle just needs a little bit of a prop, but I hope y'all don't have that problem. There we go. And then feet together, press the heels. Notice when you press those 2 heels together, it automatically moves the thighs down. So do that a couple times just to prove to yourself that that works. Not pressing my thighs, I'm pressing my thighs. Not pressing my thighs, pressing my thighs. Then keep the heels pressing, I said pressing thighs, I meant heels, sorry. I'm pressing my heels and it brings the thighs down. In addition to pressing the heels, muscularly draw the femur bones up into the hip socket. So it feels like you're trying to suck the femur bones back up into their hips with your muscles. And that also brings the knees down. And I need all of these tricks because Baddha Konasana is not a natural pose for me. So I'm pressing my heels, I'm sucking my femur bones up into the hip socket, and I'm using my hands behind me to really lift my sternum, because for me, it's easy to crawl down and become concave in this pose. So I really want to keep my sternum lifted and my spine straight as I work my legs. So press the heels, suck the femur bones up, lift the sternum. Everybody take your first two knuckles and really lift your sternum. Can you get any more height in that chest? Did you notice that maybe you were a little more concave than you thought? Keep that as you come back to just sitting up, pressing your heels and sucking your femur bones up into their sockets. Then take your brick, take it the narrow length and put it between your 2 feet. And then we're going to do the same thing. Get the strength, the length in your spine again, lift your sternum, but then press both heels into the brick. Suck both femur bones up into the hip socket. Lift the sternum. Press the heels. Draw the femur bones into the hip socket. Lift the sternum. Press the heels. Suck the femur bones in. Lift the sternum. We're going to do it one more width, ladies and gentlemen. Slightly wider. Press the heels. Suck the femur bones into the socket and lift the sternum. I should do this every day. I know I should do this every day. There's so many poses I want to do every day but I really, maybe I'll do that. Maybe that's a great 2021 resolution. Get my Baddha Konasana lower. All right, y'all have convinced me. I'm doing it. Thank you. All right, after one more attempt, really press the heels, suck the femur bones up, then remove the brick. Come back to the very first Baddha Konasana. And for most of us already in that little bit of magic work, our knees will be closer to the ground, which is why I think if I did it every day, it would revolutionize my pose. Isn't that amazing? That amazes me every time it happens. So really press the heels, suck the femur bones into the socket, lift the sternum, and enjoy the ground you gained from that little bit of brickwork. And now for dessert, we're going to set up for Supta Baddha Konasana, reclining Baddha Konasana. If you have a bolster, you can use a bolster. If you don't have a bolster, you can fold up blankets. What we do here is the bolster goes lengthwise. You do want some blanket for your head. If you don't have a bolster, y'all know how to fold the bolsters the long way, and you can put 1 or 2 bolsters together, blankets together to make a bolster. And then you're going to need your strap. And if you have tight groins or hips, you want 2 blankets or 2 bricks to put under your thighs as you come into the Supta Baddha Konasana. So get your props together. And when I see that everybody looks ready, I will remind you of the 2 important points. So you're going to want to make a big loop in your belt and sit a fist's distance away from your bolster. And I really will wait now till everybody's ready. And I'll make my loop. So it looks like everybody has their props. To come into the pose, traditionally we would start in Dandasana and once again use our hands to move the thighs, heels together. Make sure you keep that fist distance between your hips and the bolster as you then take your big belt and put the huge loop around your torso and then under the tops of your feet in front. So it goes over the ankles, around your back, and way low on your sacrum, really at your tailbone. So when you tighten it, make sure the rope stays low. If the rope comes up too high, it can make it feel pinchy in the lower back, and there's never a reason to do that. So again, the goal is, as you tighten your belt, make sure it stays very, very low on the sacrum. You can see how mine dips down. Good. When you've got that done, go ahead, make sure you still have the fist distance between your buttocks and the bolster. Put your hands down flat, lift your buttocks and off the ground and move them away from your torso towards your heels as you recline. So I'm off the ground with my butt and I'm moving my buttocks toward the heels as I then recline, and that stretches out the lower back, and once again, make sure that we don't pinch it. And then I just recline on my bolster. I have a blanket as a pillow that is under my head but touches the tops of my shoulders and doesn't go under the shoulders. And if you need thigh support, if your hips or groins are sensitive in any way, then you can put blankets under the thighs to make sure that this is not too intense of a stretch, but you don't have to use the blankets. Whichever way you decide to do that, again, move the buttock flesh toward the heels one more time, and then recline, palms up, arms at least 45 degrees away from your body so that the armpit chest, as Mr. Iyengar called it, is open. And if you wear glasses, remove them so that your temples can be soft, because this is a fully restorative pose. Once you're in the pose, release all effort. There is nothing you have to do here, not even work the legs. I say that very rarely in Iyengar classes, so just relax. Follow your breath. With every exhalation, notice how the abdomen recedes toward the spine. Release all tension. We have a little more than 1 minute left in this pose. If at any time you feel as if there's a pinch in your lower back, lift your buttocks and move the flesh down. If at any time you feel as if your trapezius muscles aren't moving down towards your buttocks, you can roll and tuck your shoulders to be sure that all of that flesh is moving away from the head. Draw your awareness back to come out. Place your hands, palms down, just behind your hips. When you press up, lift with your sternum, not from your head. So press with your hands, but sternum comes first, head hangs back if that's okay with your neck, until you're sitting upright. And then loosen the strap. And since we have had our groins open pretty intensely for a while now, use your hands on your knees to bring your legs up and extend the legs into a quick Dandasana. Then our next asana will be Viparita Karani, legs up the wall pose. So have the short edge of your mat at the wall. And we're going to use a strap on the feet for extra relaxation here. So unless you have lower back problems, you can use 2 blankets. If you have lower back problems, be flat on the floor. But if you're using blankets, they go with the rounded edge facing away. So the nice, straight, even part will be on your skin. And give yourself a little gap of a couple of inches between the rough edge of the blanket and the wall so that your buttocks can sink down into that gap. Most of you have done this before. To get into this pose, you put your sits bones on the wall next to the blankets. And as you slide and roll sideways, you keep those sits bones on the wall so that you come to a resting position with your sits bones quite literally touching the wall, your back supported by the blankets and your legs up the wall. And then for this, if there's room in your house, I mean, if you don't have a lot of room, you can keep the legs close together. But sometimes it's fun if you've got enough room to really give yourself a wide Upavista and just belt the legs like this. I hope you can see, so that I've got a really open groin and my feet are being completely supported by the belt. And hands in cactus shape like this. Again, if you don't have room for that, you can belt your feet closer together, but the wide-legged variation is pretty nice if you can do that. So either one of these, narrow-legged variation if you don't have wall space, wide-legged variation if you do. Roll and tuck your shoulders down so that the trapezius muscles are still moving away from the head, and then just relax. This pose, Viparita Karani, is one of the very best for the immune system. Being inverted, all of the inversions are good for the immune system and the lymphatic system and the lungs and all sorts of things. So these are great to practice during a pandemic. And here, even more than in Baddha Konasana, Supta Baddha Konasana, with every exhalation, feel the softness of your abdomen. Feel the abdomen recede toward its spine. Gita Iyengar used to say, this gives us a pacification of the abdomen. It pacifies our internal organs. So explore that as you rest here in Upavista Konasana.
If you wear glasses, go ahead and take them off and just set them beside yourself so that your temples can release. It used to seem to me that didn't make much difference, but the longer I practice, the more I realize, yep, that little piece of plastic can create just a little tension in my face that doesn't need to be there. We have 3 minutes left. I will give you a choice. If you are very comfortable in your Upavista Konasana and would like to stay there, Upavista Karani and want to stay there, you can stay with legs up the wall for your Shavasana portion of class. If you would prefer to tuck your knees into your chest and roll to your right and come to a classical Shavasana, corpse pose, then this would be a good time to do that. If you are choosing classical Shavasana, be sure to lie down with your knees bent, move your buttock flesh towards your heels once you're reclining, and then roll and tuck your shoulders under to keep those trapezius muscles moving away from the head. For everybody, arms away from the torso, palms up, mind soft. Draw your awareness back. Extend your fingers. Extend your toes. If you are still in Viparita Karani, draw your knees down into your chest. If you're in classical Shavasana, bring your hands to your ribcage. Then draw one knee into your chest and hold it, followed by the other, and hold them both. And everyone roll to your right, ideally, unless you will run into something or someone. The reason we roll to the right is that the heart is on the left. We like to keep the heart up. And then keeping your head soft and letting it come last, press yourself up to a seated position. And come to a comfortable seat, and we will pay respects to the practice. Thank you all for sharing your practice with me. Namaste.